Hey, one suggestion when negotiating with the IRS.
Yes.
Don't call their tax code a disaster. Oops. Yeah.
We'll edit that out.
Well, I think you know what the first people who are going to agree with that are people who work at the IRS.
Yeah, I'm
they're
sure.
they're gonna be say, yeah, there's way too much to know. I mean, there's just way too much for any one person to know. The amount of training they're given is a lot, but their caseload's also huge. They have so many different competing goals that make their job nearly impossible. And this is the reason why I'm saying this is because this directly goes into how to negotiate with IRS collections. It's a terrible job.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the fact that you said there's half as many auditors or examiners as there were, I can't believe how overwhelmed they must be.
That's the examiners. There's like about half. And then for revenue officers, they're about half of what they used to be. Yet they have more and more responsibilities. And and believe it or not, the federal government has more revenue ever is collected or assessed than ever before. Yet your collection staff is stripped out. I mean, it is nothing of what it used to be. Yeah. One of the lesser known secrets is the whole tax resolution industry is suffering mightily because the IRS isn't knocking on the door scaring the hell out of people. People are like, well, I haven't heard anything from the IRS. And the IRS is intentionally not sending collection notices because if they do, they know that someone's going to call and they don't have the person to man the call. So they're just sort of like, okay, we'll get to it later.
That guy's not so bad.
Right. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things going on right now. So it's actually a great time if you're looking to negotiate with the IRS. Right now is a great time to get ahead of it if you're going to do something like an offer and compromise. Yep. This is a great time because they want your case gone.
So you don't want to be the guy in the middle. You want to be either the one that doesn't owe a ton of money or a guy who owes a lot of money but maybe has some political connections, right? So you don't want to be the white-collar guy that owes, because you're easy to go after.
Yep.
You're not going to, you're not probably going to go to trial. You don't have to worry about.
Oh, well, I think that's if you're just talking something criminally, which is rare. I mean, the criminal charges are rare. Mostly everything. I think 2% of all IRS cases and collections are criminal.
That's it?
Yeah, no, it's not what you would think. That's not really your threat. Your bigger threat for a lot of people for incarceration for tax crimes is states. You don't pay the sales tax.
Yeah.
They put you in prison pretty quickly. They'll say, okay, well, here, you didn't pay your cigarette tax. We want $150,000. Oh, you don't have it? Okay. There's room for you. And you are far, far more likely. And if you look at generally the states, it's, there's not one area for it. So many prosecutions for the non-payment of sales taxes because those states can't print money like the federal government does. So if they don't get that money, they get a little upset about it. Federal government's like, we'll get it somewhere. It comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
So they're a little bit more cool about it, generally.
Yep.
But when you're dealing with IRS collections, it is understanding just the incredible constraints that they're under. Also knowing who you're dealing with. Most people. If the IRS a bill and you owe something under $20,000, $25,000, it's a lot of money to you. You wonder how you're going to pay it back. You're probably going to deal with something called automated collection systems, ACS. And really what you're dealing with is someone who's inputting stuff into a computer screen. They're going to ask you your information. How much money do you make? What are your expenses? And then they'll say, okay, based on this, we think you could pay this amount a month or you can't pay anything a month. Okay, and they're really, all they're doing is entering stuff into a computer screen that's spitting out a formula.
Right.
Okay, now the problem there is that you don't know what numbers to tell them.
Could you count your booze as an expense?
You can.
Oh, wow, okay, good.
If it's necessary,
yeah,
absolutely.
All right, good
I
to know.
bet if you get a doctor's note, you could get a doctor's note to say she needs more booze.
I got a good chiropractor who can write me a note.
It's the problem is for a lot of people who owe a smaller amount of money is they don't know how to negotiate, and it's a problem for us because we have people calling all the time who owe this $10,000 or $20,000, and it doesn't really make sense for them to hire us. They call the IRS, they're going to be put into some sort of payment plan that they really can't afford to pay. So we see two things happen. Okay, they default their agreement with the IRS, or they adjust their withholdings so they have more money in their pocket so they could afford to pay the IRS. But when they file their taxes the next year, their new tax liability defaults their previous agreement. Their tax bill goes up. And then at one point it says, you know what? It does make sense to hire you guys.
Oh.
I'm like, wow, it didn't years ago, but boy, I guess we're going to hire you. So that's one thing. And I wish there was a better way. You know, we try to give people as many tips as we can to negotiate with them. And just what you want to do is look at, if you're calling the IRS and you're calling ACS to negotiate a payment plan, the best advice I can give you is go look at the allowable expenses for your area. Okay. Really, if you go and max out those allowable expenses, you're not going to get much of a difficult time with ACS. They'll just accept it for face value. Maybe your payment's a little bit lower. I'm not trying to tell you to lie about something, but you don't know what your rent's going to be next year.
Right.
Your rent could go up to the maximum allowable. So really, that is my best advice I could give someone who's trying to negotiate, who owes a small amount with the IRS, and trying to get something that they can kind of live with and make sure that the problem's not going to get bigger.
Right.
And go on to the point where like, okay, let's hire you.
So it is possible for an average Joe to negotiate successfully.
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering
except,
because
I mean, define average Joe. That's, I mean, if we're going to define average Joe as you, then yes. But you're really smart and you might not know everything about the IRS, but you're good at figuring things out. It's how good are you, how good at you are figuring things out when the answer is not clear and they're not making it clear. There is an answer there for sure, and there is a right way to do it for sure. It takes detective work, and you have to. I think if you're able to get in that mode where you want to be that detective and figure out the crime no one else can do, then you can do it.
Oh, I'd be good at that.
Okay, yeah, right. You can do it. But if you're somebody who's like, okay, this is all scaring me, and I'm sort of wondering, I don't know, you're going to have a hard time. And you might just pray that an IRS person has pity on you. Other options are low-income tax clinics, and a lot of law schools have those, and that's where we pick up a lot of our attorneys come from there.
Oh, wow.
They have experience doing low income, so you can get really great representation there. So good. We hire them. We hire their alumni. The taxpayer advocate's also somebody, but usually they'll want you to try on your own first to get a plan that you can afford to pay back. And then if it's something completely unreasonable, and we've seen it, we've seen some really incredible denials. We've seen the IRS not allow someone their cancer medication.
Jesus.
First of all, like she made, again, she didn't even make the $42,000 a year. She made like $30,000 a year. She couldn't drive anymore. So and this is before Uber came out. So this was like 5 years ago. So she had to pay money to go to the doctor for the cab. And then she was out of pocket cancer medication. And the IRS comes back, oh, you can pay it's $800 a month. And I just like, no way.
And they wonder why they have a bad reputation.
No way. Like, who made this decision? And so she hired us to do this, and we fought tooth and nail just to get her cancer medication. And some of the stuff, it gets really strange. Like, why did you gave this person a hard time? Meanwhile, you can have someone who doesn't have the cancer medication making the same amount. They're like, yeah. What do you get a chance,
maybe $200 a month.
Whatever you want, nothing. That's cool. I mean, that's another option. You might be able to get to allow them to pay nothing a month. They can do that.
Really?
Where they only take your refunds if you're entitled to refund, and that 10-year statute's going on, and then you actually can get to a point where you might even be able to file bankruptcy.
Yep.
And negotiating the bankruptcy card is that's a little bit. You don't want to necessarily do that with an ACS employee because you're going to come off a little bit too knowledgeable. You're like, wow, you seem to know a lot about this collection, so let me tell you what I'm going to do. You don't want to seem that smart when you're doing it. Yeah. Now, for other people, well, a lot more, and especially here's something, Claudine. You ever think about your employee withholding? You get your check. You've always gotten your net pay, right?
Right.
And you take a look at that and you go deposit, and that's as far as you know what the net pay was.
Right.
Where's all that other money that's withholded? Where is that?
Doesn't the government take it all?
Well, how?
I don't know.
Yeah. There needs to be something. There needs to be a step that happens between.
Yeah.
Right.
I never thought of that.
Right. You never thought of that.
No.
Who is actually giving them that? You know what your net pay is, you know what your gross is, but there's the difference. Where is that?
Where?
Well, sometimes it's not there. Sometimes employers sort of get behind on cash flow and they say, well, let's talk about the things we could afford to pay. We can make our employees net pay, and we could pay for supplies so we could keep our doors open next week.
Whoa.
Or we can make our net pay and our federal tax deposits, and then we'll close our doors next week and lay everybody off. Okay, so this is what we're going to do.
Plan A.
Plan A, employees never know that
No.
the payroll deposits were never made. And if you file your tax return,
Yeah.
or with the amount withheld, put down the amount you said was withheld, you'll get the refund, even though the government didn't get it.
Whoa.
The government didn't get it. They're giving you a refund for taxes that weren't paid. So those are the cases where the IRS tends to get a little bit testy.
Do they come after you or the company?
They come after the company.
Okay.
Right. They go after the company for trust fund taxes. And those are a lot of the cases that we get involved in, payroll tax cases, because the amounts involved can get serious. Criminal charges can come up, not a lot. Usually they're looking to assess somebody personally for that liability and then getting a repayment plan. The problem with these payroll cases is that the amounts get way out of control. The other problem is that people will do anything to get rid of the IRS. They'll get into a bad deal. They just want the IRS gone. They'll say, oh, sure, I'll agree to that. Please. But it's not sustainable.
Yep.
And then all they do is they crash and burn, defaulting a later deal. Then the IRS comes back again to say, hey, we worked with you before. We can't trust you. Not understanding the person is so scared about what's going to happen. And that's really where I think our negotiations with the IRS to get some time and to say, hey, look, this is why the business failed, or this is why it ran behind. And then that's also a time for a frank conversation with the business owner to say, what the hell happened here?
Yeah.
Maybe it's better to close the doors than continue to run up this debt that's only going to get you in trouble that you can't discharge in bankruptcy. Maybe that's a better move. Try something new than continue down here. Now, if it's something where, a big one that happens is doctors. Doctors take forever to get paid.
Oh, yes, they do, especially with insurance claims.
So doctors who, they're the solid, right? Hey, marry a doctor,
Yep.
They're the ones who are getting hammered with delayed payments, lowered payments. And so they have huge staffs and, their payroll is high.
Yeah.
So your payroll taxes are high. So they're getting hammered and they've never dealt with this before in their life. The whole reason you went into medicine was there was some financial security, right?
And they didn't really love math.
So they did that. And now they're dealing with the IRS coming after them. And they're like, well, you have all this money, all this money. And it's like they don't understand the slow payers, which is basically everybody.
Yep.
And that's changed so many industries, the slow paying. So many businesses that never had the issues before. Usually in the past 10 years ago, payroll tax problem, construction company. I'd tell you that's what it's going to be.
Yep.
And those construction companies are out of business, so they're not even around anymore. They're all out of business. So really who's getting now are professionals. A lot of attorneys. They have clients who slow pay.
Yeah.
And especially when you're getting paid by the government, that's really when you get, oh my God. And then if there's a government, and then if there's a subcontractor in between you and the government, there's huge delays. And so then people go and they try factoring. That's you sell your accounts receivable, but then you're taking a hit. And so you could actually have a good business.
Yeah.
Underneath there, somewhere between it all, you could actually have a good business, but the IRS doesn't see that. They see somebody who's stealing the government's money.
Yep.
Like, well, you're taking this money and you're doing all this stuff with it. The money wasn't there. It's not there yet. Once it's there,
Then,
we'll get it to you. And that's really where, you want to get out ahead of the issue and show the IRS, whatever you got to start being current and not adding more to it, and then taking time. And again, here's the key. Do the hard work to go over the financials.
And the last thing I think I'm getting out of this is to take out the emotional part of it, which I think is hard for a client to do, to not be emotional in the negotiations.
When it's your life and then when it's your business,
Yeah.
when it's everything you've put into, it's incredible. And as we were talking yesterday in preparation for this, I would never, ever use myself to negotiate my own tax problem.
Yep.
I would have to be in another part of the planet. I just say, send me a text message. Let me know how it goes. I couldn't even handle it for a second because it is so invasive and it's everything. And it's your financial security. It's everything. And it's so consequential as well.
Yep.
And a wrong personality could set you off into doing the wrong thing and losing focus of really what a better goal is.
Exactly. And anytime you negotiate, it's like that. If I have to negotiate with my husband or my daughter or at work or with a customer.
Well, our clients tend to be great negotiators.
Really?
Yeah. No, they are. They're successful business people. They didn't get there because you were a terrible negotiator. A lot of them are great a lot of them do government compliance work. So they know the game, but then they know to say, look, I know what it takes to get an FDA drug approved. I know what it takes to get an environmental plan approved. I don't know the background of this tax stuff. I don't know what's there, but I know what I do is worth something. So I figure what you are doing is worth something. And so those are the kind of clients you want. And those are the ones where, you're not going to impress them by, well, I told the IRS off.
Yes.
I really yelled at them. I showed them. And the bluster. And I think that's a lot of, what we see a lot is we take cases over a lot from other professionals, and there's just the lack of work. They just didn't do anything. They just delayed and frustrated the IRS, angering that person who's just like, look, I got to clear this desk off. I'm getting pressure from every way. You didn't give me anything. I gave you all this time to get me back this. You've given me this little bit. Okay, here's our deal. Something horrible that the client can't possibly pay. The client is paying the price for the horrible representation.
Yep.
And sometimes you can get some sympathy from the IRS for that, but not always.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the IRS is known for their sympathetic side. It's not what you Google when you Google IRS.
Oh, yeah. No, not a suggested
nice
search for
stories.
Nice stories.
Yes. So it is possible then. What we've learned today is, yes, you can negotiate with the IRS, which really surprises me. I
That's
didn't think it was possible.
I look at it and I'm so much into it. That's all it is to me. It's all negotiation, but in that negotiation is so much of the legwork and the homework, and not just coming in and schmoozing them. It's not that at all. Now I have, my best negotiations with the IRS are simple phone calls where they call and they say, okay, and then that's it. Because we submitted everything. We know what pressures they're under. We know what's realistic. And they said, yeah, that's reasonable. Thank you so much for helping us clear this case out of our inventory because we're overworked.
Right. All right. So we know now that if they want some direction, if they're not sure if they should negotiate themselves, if they should hire someone, they can just call and sort of get at least an idea of where to head with their problem.
That's right.
Okay. So it is possible to negotiate with the IRS.